The family of murdered anti-apartheid activist Ahmed Timol is calling on government to stop funding João Rodriguez's trial, like the former security branch officer is implicated in Timol's murder. We're now joined by Timol's nephew, Imtiaz Cajee. Thank you so much for your time this evening. So let us get it clear. At the time, Rodriguez was employed by the security branch of the South African Police Services, and he says that he was acting under instruction. So the state would be paying for this trial. If you could give us clarity as to which aspects it is that you are contesting.
That's correct, Thami. Rodriguez was employed by the previous apartheid state. To put some context in this particular story, we should look at the matter of Nokuthula Simelane, the murdered anti-apartheid activist whose remains have not been found. Some of the security branch officers were charged, and when they appeared in court, they simply stated that they don't have the legal funds, to cover their cost. The matter dragged on for a number of years until it was presented in front of the Constitutional Court that ruled that the state must cover their costs because they were previous employees of the state. Now, in the Rodriguez matter, when he appeared at the 2017 inquest, the state provided him with legal representation, which meant covering his legal cost. And when he was then charged, approximately 9 months after the inquest had concluded, once again, he had 3 legal representatives covered by you and I as taxpayers, citizens of this country. And we've now ended up in a situation where more than 2 years later, after the historic ruling on the 12th of October 2017, Rodriguez's criminal case has not commenced. His legal team argued for a permanent stay of prosecution in front of a full bench, which was dismissed. They appealed that decision, which was again dismissed. And they're now taking the matter, petitioning the matter to the Supreme Court of Appeal in Bloemfontein. And what we're saying is that I, as the fourth respondent in this matter, totally depend on pro bono services, the likes of the Legal Resources Center, Foundation for Human Rights, and Webber Wentzel, to cover my legal cost. And here's Rodriguez, apart from the criminal case, in our view, stalling the commencement of the criminal case, taking it to the SCA, and in most probability, then taking it to the highest court in the order, which is the Constitutional Court. And we as taxpayers are continuing to pay, to cover his legal costs, and this is a problem for us.
So what I gather you saying is, let this trial begin.
Correct.
No more delays, which is what you are saying Rodriguez is doing with his various appeals, that the state should stop funding all of those delays and those appeals. Which means
by him petitioning the SCA, he should cover the cost, not the state.
You have actually gone into the records to see exactly how much was actually paid. It's quite a staggering amount. Take us through that. Well over 3.6 million rand.
Yes, Thami. In May this year, I submitted a PI application to the Department of Justice and Correctional Services, wanting to know what was the total cost that the state had incurred. It had taken more than 6 months, which again is not in adherence to the PI regulation. But nevertheless, when a response was presented, the Department of Justice was not prepared to give a detailed breakdown, talking about privacy issues of one of the attorneys. And the figure that they had given was 3.5 million. And this is prior to a commencement of the criminal case. And this is what the presiding judge that has been overseeing this matter, Judge Munaba, has been scathing about for a long time, referring to it as deep pockets of the state, that it's a simple abuse of the system. And, we had a desired result last week, or this week, Thursday, when we appeared at the Palm Ridge High Court, where he only had 1 legal representative attending, which means that they've got the message that they cannot continue. But Judge Munama is simply saying that this loophole must be closed because it's a simple abuse of taxpayers' money.
Rodriguez before had 2 advocates, as well as the attorney Ben Minar, who incidentally was actually working for the state before he started being the attorney for Rodriguez. Your thoughts on that?
Well, it raises a lot of questions, Thami. I mean, he was employed by the state attorney's office. Once Rodriguez gets charged, he then resigns, goes into private practice, continues to represent Rodriguez. And surely, I mean, the state attorney's office needs to apply their mind before just blindly paying out for legal costs. I mean, it is painful to note that not just me as a fourth respondent in this matter, but many, many other families, Thami, throughout the length and breadth of this country, who are eagerly watching this particular case, don't have legal representation. And here's Rodriguez abusing, and his legal team abusing the state in terms of the constitution, of his legal mandate and legal right. And we totally support Judge Monama by saying that this must come to an end. And if he continues appealing it, it must come out from his own pocket.
And what type of steps have you taken to ensure that indeed this does become a speedy trial and that there isn't more taxpayers' money that goes towards Rodriguez during this time?
Look, Thami, on the speedy trial, you know, Judge Monama reminded us again on Thursday that Rodriguez is entitled in terms of his legal rights, in terms of the Constitution, that he can take this matter to the Supreme Court of Appeal. And it is highly unlikely that the Supreme Court of Appeal will overrule the decision of a full bench. And then he's entitled to take it again to the Constitutional Court. But if he's not paying for it, he's going to explore all the avenues that are available to him.
So what recourse do you have as far as the payment is concerned? Because that really is the bone of your contention, the fact that he can appeal as much as he wants. It is his legal right, yes. But that the state, you and I, as taxpayers, should not be paying for that. Do you have any muscle to ensure that that is something that is enforceable? What recourse do you have?
Well, we will be writing with my legal team to the State Attorney's Office, you know, asking them to apply their mind and not just blindly, you know, paying out. But apart from that, we need to mount pressure. I mean, this is, you know, these are the lessons that we then learned, that we as families suffered during the apartheid era. We continue struggling 25 years since the dawn of democracy. The Timol matter is the first matter, you know, where inquest has been reversed, and many, many other families throughout the country are desperately wanting to know when are their cases going to be investigated, if people are living, when are they going to be charged, if alleged perpetrators have passed on. Still, the matters need to be reopened, and, you know, those inquest findings must be reversed, because the annals of history, Thami, will continue to reflect. Died in suicide, committed suicide, jumped to his death, died through natural causes. And the fact of the matter is we know that apartheid police were brutal in torturing political activists, and most certainly that they were murdered.
So this really for you goes beyond your particular family. It goes beyond Rodriguez. But you're seeing it as something that could be the backbone for so many families who find themselves in your position. Are you in contact with any other, you know, former struggle heroes, families, in order to work on this collectively?
No, most certainly, Thami, because this is it's not a solo project. Because this appeals to families throughout the length and breadth of this country, like the family of Imam Harun in Cape Town, the Craddock Four, Mopetla Mohapi. I mean, I've got overwhelming support from the Steve Bantu Biko Foundation. I mean, the families of Nicodemus Khawati, Solomon Modipani, Suleiman Babla Saluji, Neil Agate. These are all families, Dr. Hussein Hafizi, desperately waiting to see something transpires, because they expected when they testified at the TRC that their matters will be reinvestigated. There will be some form of action which will bring some form of justice and closure to them. And the unfortunate reality is that absolutely nothing has transpired.
The 1972 verdict was overruled, and this was in October of 2017, pretty much almost a couple of months after this case was resumed. Where is Rodriguez now? What is his current fate?
Well, I mean, that's why I need to emphasize the point, Thami, that it took 9 months from the inquest ruling, which was made on the 12th of October 2017, for him to have his first court appearance. 9 months, where the docket kept on moving between the NPA offices at the head office and in Gauteng. And one must commend the Director of Public Prosecutions in Gauteng, Andrew Chauke, for being brave and bold enough for actually signing off for Rodriguez to get charged. So it's taken more than 2 years, where we continue going to court, and whenever there's any progress for a criminal date to be set for the actual criminal case to commence, there's always been delays from his legal team. And like I stated earlier, they sought a permanent stay of prosecution, dismissed, they appealed that. Now again, when we need to commence, they're now taking it to the Supreme Court of Appeal. And he's 81 years old. He continues publishing books. So that clearly indicates that he's healthy for him to publish books at that particular age. And we desperately want to have him to have his day in court, because we feel, Thami, that he's the one person that can shed a lot of light as to what really happened, what were the true circumstances of events that led to the brutal killing of my uncle.
The eventual outcome that you and your family desire from this court case, what is it that you would like to see?
Look, we've been blessed that we managed to get an inquest finding reversed, which is unprecedented since the dawn of democracy. That's the first matter. The second is the truth. Here's one individual who knows what really transpired. He could have been complicit in covering up the death and the brutal killing of my uncle, but he is living, and there's overwhelming evidence that his version of events is not plausible. And that is precisely why Judge Balimote ruled in the 2017 inquest that the police version of events were not true, that my uncle committed suicide, but that he was brutally murdered. So even now, Thami, we reach out to him to say that at your age, you are close to meeting your creator. Cleanse yourself. Come forward, make a full and honest disclosure. Break ranks, with the lies that were portrayed by the security branch, covered up by the judicial system at that particular time. We know that political activists were brutally tortured. And his version that my uncle, when he saw my uncle, he had no wounds or injuries, is totally contradictory to the version of the pathologist, who stated that Uncle Ahmed had 27 anti-mortem wounds on his body prior to his fall. And Rodriguez sticks to his version that Uncle Ahmed had no injuries. So we continue pleading with him. Set a new president in this country, speak the truth, cleanse your conscience, so that we can set a new president, encourage other apartheid era perpetrators to bring these families to some form of closure and to set the record straight.
We had the Truth and Reconciliation Commission during those years of transition in our country. And when you look at perpetrators of apartheid crimes and violence and crimes against humanity, a lot of them would perhaps fear for their own lives. As you've realized, as you've said, Rodriguez is 81 years old, and who wants to spend the latter years of their lives in prison? Do you think a sort of amnesty would go a long way in actually getting the truth, or what are your thoughts on that? If ultimately truth is what families want.
But this is precisely the point, Thami. Amnesty can only be granted when the perpetrators make a full confession and they speak the truth. I mean, this is desperately what families are searching for. Their loved ones are never coming back. It's a painful reality that in the dawn of democracy that they've been forgotten. The ruling party has simply forgotten them. I mean, if we look at political manifestos of political parties, nobody talks about the TRC, the unfinished TRC business. Absolutely none of the political parties. So families continue to be on their own. The principle is that for us to move forward, simply, how do you forgive somebody when they're not asking for forgiveness?
And I guess there is also the issue of justice and how that will be balanced. But I thank you so much for your time this evening.
My pleasure.
Thank you. That's Imtiaz Cajee, the nephew